Hello and welcome to episode of 123. That 100 Michael Jordan though, here with Zach Harper. So cool. A little bit about Zach. He's a staff writer for The Athletic, covering the NBA. He joined The Athletic after covering the NBA for ESPN.com, CBS Sports, and FRS Sports since 2009. He also hosts radio for SiriusXM NBA and SiriusXM Mad Dog Sports Radio. And that's just a little bit of that's just a few of his many accomplishments. How are you today?
I'm excellent. How are you doing?
I'm good. And I forgot the most important one is that you're a fellow grad, man. Go Marauders.
Go Marauders. Yeah. Class of 2000.
Class of 2000. Remember Y2K was a big deal?
I remember it was supposed to be, we've been joking about this like on the pod and every once in a while and on radio every once in a while. I was like, I don't think kids know, like this was such a big deal. We thought planes were going to fall out of the sky and if you think about it, it was such a dumb fear because it was like all of a sudden planes were going to be like, well, it's 1900. We didn't have these computers back then. So we're just going to fall. Like it made no sense. But at the time, it was such a craze.
Exactly. I was just like, oh, okay. They must know what they're talking about. So,
yeah.
You know, it's just like a clock turned into 00 and I guess everything's going to go into chaos. And, you know, I don't know if I can move over this way. Can you get a look of that? Can you get a look at that face right there in the back?
Yeah.
That poster with the guy with the beard.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've had that on the pod. I got to get it, better poster, better view. Can you name that movie? Totally random.
Can I see that again?
That's from a movie.
Okay.
Supposedly the woman in the movie painted that.
Okay.
So it's like I have a poster of the supposed
poster of, oh man, I'm drawing a blank here.
Yeah, one dog goes one way, one dog goes the other way. Got a nice head of white hair. We got Pesci talking to his mom. Don't paint any more religious pictures.
Yeah.
All right. That scene where they're, she wakes up at 2:30 in the morning. You know what I'm talking
about? Oh man. Why am I drawing a blank on the name of it? This is gonna drive me crazy.
Oh, it's Goodfellas.
Goodfellas. I had Casino in my head. I'm like, I know it's not Casino. Like, I know it's not Casino.
I totally put you on the spot.
No, it's fine.
It's a very random pop culture reference.
No, I should have known it. And this is the problem with not getting a whole lot of sleep during the playoffs. Is like I'll even just know like, all right, I have something to do today. I've got it set in my head. I like 3 o'clock. I've got to do this. 3 o'clock. I've got to do this. And it gets to 3 o'clock. I'm like, what do I have to do again? Like it's just my deprivation has killed me at this point.
Well, I just appreciate you carving out some time, man. I know you're incredibly busy. So we're recording on the 16th. So last night was Celtics won and the Suns got hammered. I won't say the Mavs won. I'll say the Suns got hammered. Chris Paul, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's old. He's turned 37. Was there any goodwill to begin with? Did he lose it all? How do you rate his legacy? Or is it too early on that?
I mean, he's one of the 10 greatest point guards of all time or something like that, right? Like he's somewhere in that range. Like I wouldn't put him against above certain guys, but like his career is incredible. His skill level is nearly unmatched. Sure. It's just, the playoffs are hard and winning a championship is hard. And for whatever reason, he's got just a bad time of trying to get through. Made to the finals last year, got up 2-0, and then Giannis happened, and it's another example of like sometimes like there's just a better star than you.
Whoever's hottest at the time too, right? Yeah. I when I think of Chris Paul, I think about like I don't think he's somebody I'd like to play with.
Right.
I think of like that. Remember when DeAndre Jordan got balled out by him?
Yeah.
It was right. The shot clock was running down. Like, I always think of that one image, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like talking to players who've played with Steve or played with Chris Paul and played with and played for those pre-Steve Ballmer Clippers, right? Like everyone talks about how like those, he does raise the level of just professionalism, attention to detail. Like you don't realize how much you're screwing up in a basketball game, but then it gets to like that second year or that third year and it's just like, all right, Chris, I get it. Like lay off a little bit, but he's psychotically competitive in a way that eventually becomes a detriment and it wears on teammates. And it's just like, he's kind of a jackass when it comes to that stuff.
You gotta patent that, by the way. Psychotically competitive.
I've used that
So
about KG. I've used that about Jordan. I've used that about Kobe, and Chris Paul is probably the worst of those ones who get that label.
Anything is possible, KG.
Yeah.
Right, man. Well, so like they're talking about next year what they're gonna do with Chris Paul. Like I think he literally just turned 37 like a week ago. And then Booker's young and the whole deal. But do you bring Chris Paul back next year? Do you have no choice? I guess.
I mean, he's under contract for like $30 million for the next couple of years, and he's still good. He's still like he got them to become a winner.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be, can he stay healthy? Can he come through in the clutch, or can Devin Booker become so good that it doesn't matter?
Did you happen to see Patrick Beverley today? Just go.
I did. Patrick Beverley. Well, it's also I don't know if you caught the social media aspect of it, but then Damian Lillard picked apart Patrick Beverley's criticism, and there's this weird thing with Pat throughout the league where I think if you play alongside him, you love him, and if you play against him, he's the worst.
Right.
And so he's one of those guys that you'll love him if he plays for your favorite team. You'll probably end up loving him. Like I know Timberwolves fans were all about him this year, and for the most part, like most people just roll their eyes because he's just like this yapping dog, like off to the side that never is quiet.
So like 2 or 3 grains of salt with him, in other words.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, that's the funny thing is John Morant had 47 in a game against the Warriors, right? And he tweets like, "Didn't get 47 on us." It's like, yeah, he didn't need 47 to beat you guys. Right. Like it was a lot easier. You guys beat yourselves. Like he's a good trash talker up to a certain point, but then doesn't realize like, no, you've just backed yourself into a quarter by saying all this stuff.
Seriously. So I was surprised to hear, listening to a lot of your stuff, reading some of the interviews about you. You're a T-Wolves fan, or were?
I was, yeah. I've kind of given up like team fandom once you get into the job. Some people hold on to their fandom, and for me, I'm too vain. I'd rather be right than biased. So trying to talk myself into the Timberwolves being good when they're probably the worst franchise since their inception, was something that I just kind of gave up on. And it's like my little shred of professionalism in what I do. And so, it was weird. Like growing up in Sacramento, I just picked the Wolves as a kid. And it's like before the KG, like I have a Danielle Marshall jersey that I still have. Like, Isaiah Ryder was a big deal to me. And then they got KG, and, I got to go to a couple of games whenever they came to Arco every year. And, and then once KG was there and they got a little good, they were on TNT a lot more, and you got to kind of follow them a little bit. And then they got like, about as good as they've ever been. And they were on TNT a lot. And then, as all things Timberwolves, they fell apart. And once they traded KG, it's funny, once they traded KG back in 2007, I was glad that they did, because I was like, you're just wasting his career. Like my KG fandom became greater than my Timberwolves fandom at the time. And so they traded him to the Celtics, and I tried to be a Bobcats fan for like a week. I was like, I'm going to abandon this team. I'm just going to go find it. And then it was at that point where I started like getting into writing and starting a website and everything. And I was just like, what am I doing? I'm not going to be a Bobcats fan. I don't want to be a Wolves fan anymore. I'm just going to like basketball.
That's hilarious. I'm thinking of like Tony Campbell
Campbell, Pooh Richardson, Michael Williams, who not a lot of people remember, but there was a time where he had the record for most consecutive free throws made or something like that.
Remember there were like, I'm not a huge NFL fan. I don't know if you are. Remember there were like 7 Mike Williamses in the NFL?
Yeah, they were all wide receivers, right? Like
exactly.
Yeah.
So who were those Bobcats? Who were in the Bobcats? At
the time, like it was like Emeka Okafor and Matt Carroll, who was like a shooter, and
from Notre Dame.
From Notre Dame. I'm trying to think of. They had like, I think that might have been Ray Felton and Sean May were in the mix there. Yeah, maybe. Gerald Wallace had gone from the Kings to the Bobcats, Wallace. So it was sort of a fun team, but not really.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm old school. I remember the Kings being down, 40-4 against the Lakers in the first quarter in like 86, 87. Remember those days, right?
Yeah.
So I take a little bit of offense. You said the T-Wolves have the worst franchise. I mean, the Kings have been.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because the Kings have the second longest playoff drought
16 years, right?
Prior to Rick Adelman getting there, right?
Sure.
And then have bookended that with the longest one in NBA history. So it's not, I mean, look, the Kings are up there. It's the Kings, it's the Wolves, and then there was the Clippers until Steve Ballmer bought them. And now it's like, now they'll at least be good forever.
Oh man. Well, I appreciated earlier when you said, Chris Paul, you're like, let's go 10. Like, give us, top 10. Give us a cushion. Like, right? Like,
Yeah.
he's not top 5. Like, we can put him there. I always, kind of wonder about like rankings. Some of that I'm sure you have to do for your job, like the
Yeah.
power rankings and this and
Right.
that, right? And we've all got friends who are like, man, I'm gonna like, okay, man, you're on a desert island, like, and you got highlights of one like, who's it gonna be? Like, come on, right?
Right.
ESPN, the football guys, Chris Berman and them, they get, Bill Simmons, like, oh, he's 20 and 24 this year. It's like, why don't we listen to his picks, right? What are your thoughts on like, kind of like being, like you said, being a fan,
Yeah,
and also being a prognosticator, I guess.
yeah.
Right?
It's a weird thing because like the more I've been in this business, the more I've realized like predictions don't mean anything. Like, I don't get a raise when I get them right. I don't get fired when I get them wrong. Exactly. Like it's like none of it matters. I remember there was a year where they were Deadspin. This is back when Deadspin was like really a thing, and Deadspin was just tracking all these like national people and I think it was their picks for the playoffs. And so I think the first year I was involved in that tracking, I think I was like second or third worst out of like 30 or 20, 30 people, however many it was. And then the year after that, I think I was second or third best.
Okay.
In that. And I remember seeing that and just realized like none of this means anything. I didn't change any like methods for how I was guessing series and playoffs or anything. I was just like, it's just something where it's easy clickbait. Sure. Like that's a real thing where it's just here. Like I picked the Mavericks to win Game 7 on Sunday, and did I know that was going to happen? No. I just like I like the way Luka's playing. I don't like the way Chris Paul's playing. Yeah. I'll just say what the hell, and then if not, well, they're on the road. They're road teams rarely win that. I also picked the Bucks to win Game 7. They didn't win. They got smashed. Like the prediction thing is just so weird, and then you can tell like who's making predictions based on relationships, like what teams they like, or just like they're trying to know something, right? Like they're like, you can kind of tell like Bill Simmons is always going to be biased towards the Celtics. Every pick he makes is going to be for the Celtics, and like when he talks about a team that could challenge the Celtics, it's going to be like downgrading how real they like. There's no way he's going to respect the Miami Heat in the conference finals. Like there just isn't, because he wants to talk himself into it. Some people will vote LeBron James 5th place MVP this year because they have a working relationship with LeBron James. And like, it's such a weird thing to try to make these picks. And like, ultimately they're meaningless and they're clickbait.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a compliment here. You're young, right?
I just turned 40. Yeah.
You're young, man. So, I got you about a year and a half or so. Like we're kind of in that maybe in between where it's like, like the analytical time, right? The time of analytics, right? And the corner 3-pointers. Yeah. And then, the old school can say, I can just tell by by watching them play. Right.
Right.
In the same way too, like gambling as upfront, right. In the NBA is a new thing. 2 years, 3 years. Right. Yeah.
They started like kind of moving towards that maybe 6 or 7 years ago, but have been like outwardly embracing it for about 3 years. Yeah,
exactly. Right. So I kind of wonder like maybe how much you're for the most part freelance, you work different things, but you work for the Athletic.
Yeah.
Like how much maybe you are asked to or recommended to kind of tie into like betting.
I haven't been with the Athletic. Like we'll do stuff occasionally because I believe BetMGM is like a betting partner. Yes. With the Athletic, like they have a working partnership. Okay. And so like on a podcast, like one of the weekly podcasts I'll do, it's called Point of Contention. It comes out on Thursdays, and it's just me hosting, and then it's usually Marcus Thompson, who covers the Warriors for the Athletic, and Jay King, who covers the Celtics for the Athletic. They're on, and it's kind of like a podcast PTI style thing, right? Sure. I host, and then they're kind of debating, and I throw in my dumb jokes and everything. And maybe every week or every other week, we'll do like hey, these are the betting odds, right? Of like MVP or rookie of the year or coach of the year. And we kind of use that as a jumping off point of like having the MVP conversation. And so like there is a tie-in, but for the most part, I'm rarely asked to like do anything that's actually tied to gambling. Yes. There are some people who do that and do a really good job of it, but like I'm not totally comfortable with that. And so I'm lucky enough that like the Athletic is kind of like, do whatever you want to do. Like, we're not going to shoehorn you into something that you don't want to do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I want to say it was 2007. I'm in Vegas, and I bet on San Antonio, maybe -3.
Okay.
They're up 4 with like 8 seconds to go against LeBron's Cavs.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, maybe it's the flip side. Ginobili throws up a 75-footer that doesn't matter. They're down 4, right? Yeah, it was Cavs -3. Goes in at the buzzer.
Yeah.
Lose, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing, no way to feel worse about yourself than something like that, right? Where you're like, oh man, like paying attention to like the last seconds and the free throws and that kind of thing. Right?
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny about that is like I'll do this dumb thing on Twitter if I'm watching a game and like say it's like a 9-point game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a guy hits a 3 at the buzzer to cut it to 6 or whatever. I'll be like, oh, Cameron Payne at the buzzer. I'll type in all caps, Cameron Payne at the buzzer. Suns lose 106-100 or whatever. And almost every time that happens, somebody will hit me with like, yeah, the line was actually 7.5.
Right.
And I have no idea about any of this stuff, but like they're like, hey, that actually did matter to gamblers or whatever. I'm like, that's insane to me. That you can lose your bet on just a last second meaningless shot.
Not just lose your bet, maybe lose your family. You know,
right? Yeah, who knows what you put on it.
Like that one guy who just told his wife this will be the last one. You know,
this is the last one. We win this, we're whole. And then just that Cameron Payne shot at the end, completely meaningless style to everybody else. Yeah,
shoot, man. Well, so growing up in Sacramento, I would let you've talked a little bit sometimes about how you got into writing, into the athletic eventually, starting out maybe 2007. So you were working as like a paralegal, like counsel?
I was like a clerk in the Court of Appeals, the 3rd District Court of Appeals. And so it was like mostly like a lot of like mailroom, just clerical stuff, running files and stuff. My mom worked for the court at the time. She was an assistant for a judge. And so I was there were 2 buildings. I was in the other building, but I got to like see my mom every day, and it was great to like, be around her and stuff. And there's just a certain point where I always had a passion for basketball. Like I've always been obsessed with basketball. I thought like, hey, I think I could do this. I could write a little bit and figure this out. And I just decided to start a website, and it was really confusing because I didn't know any of this. Like I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. I just knew how I wanted to talk about basketball. And so I would, sorry to the taxpayers of California, but I would get my work done by like 10:30 in the morning. I would show up at 8, get the majority of my work done by like 10:30 in the morning. And then I just work on my website the rest of the day, work on writing, and like maintain whatever work I had to do for the rest of the day. But if I got the majority of it done in the morning, then it allowed me to focus on stuff I actually had a passion for. And and I got the right people to look at it.
Shoot, man, I sent you a really important email about 3:30 p.m. in 2007. Thanks for not answering it, man.
Well, if it affected your appeal, I would maybe take that to the Supreme Court. I hear that they're not so busy anymore. So it should be fine. Yeah.
Right. The clerical stuff and working for appeals and stuff. I mean, did you do like was that like factual writing when you had to do it?
No, it wasn't like I wasn't really writing anything. It was just a lot of filing stuff. So like it was a very low level job and nothing I had studied for or anything like that. Like it was just it was better than retail. Like that's what I'd been doing retail before that, and it was just like, oh, okay, I can have benefits. Like what an idea.
Right.
Yeah.
What kind of writing did you do? What was your relationship with language growing up? I mean, were you, we came from that time. I think, there's Sports Illustrated for kids. There was that Thursday Sports Illustrated. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I mean, was that something you grew up reading? Like, what were you reading, not just sports wise in those days?
Yeah, I mean, I was reading, I was reading the paper, mostly the paper.
People read that?
Back then they did. Back then it was like a thing. Yeah. I would read the Bee, and I would read Sports Illustrated, and then Slam Magazine was actually very influential for me. Like obviously like the insert posters and everything. But I would read really anything about basketball that I could find. I was super into baseball, super into football, but I just connected with basketball in a different way. And so if there was a magazine article, if there was a cool looking book, if there was something in the paper, it was very like sports related. Like I wasn't into fiction, I wasn't into anything other than like nonfiction. Let me read about basketball. Like Larry Bird's Drive, it's his autobiography. I've read that probably 30 times in my life. Like it's my favorite book. And because I just love Larry Bird, I love the mentality. So it was like a lot of that stuff.
How about were you reading, you talked about Larry Bird, and his story obviously is incredible.
Yeah.
Were you reading a lot of like, and I mean this as a compliment, like nerdy stuff, like stats and analytics?
I got into that. Like I like analytics, like that. Well, I like some analytics. so like that was stuff that I didn't really get into until I started like trying to figure this out as a career.
Okay.
Like I was pretty ignorant to that stuff, but no, like it was just a lot of stories. Like I just like, that's my favorite part of doing my job, is like just talking to guys about stories of like, I get to every once in a while I get to host with Sam Mitchell on NBA radio.
Oh, nice.
And I always weasel like a Larry Bird story out of him at some point in there. Or like if I'm hosting with Rick Mahorn every once in a while, like I'll try to get some like Bad Boys Pistons stories out of him during the show. Because I think the way players talk about other players is just fascinating. So for me, it was like learning the game through their eyes. That was super interesting to me.
Oh, very cool. Back to the Slam magazines day. Did they ever get you to buy the strength shoes?
No, I never bought the strength shoes. I thought about it a lot, and I never could like pony up the money for it. But I would look at that ad every single time. It was that. And then there was like this double headband that like one went across the head and one like went diagonal. And it was this single headband that had two straps that like Al Harrington and Jamal Crawford were sponsoring. And so like those were the two things I would just look all the time like, man, someday I'm gonna have the strength shoes, I'm gonna have the headband, like I'm gonna be jumping everywhere and not sweating on anything.
Aspirational, man.
Yeah,
that's right. Jay crossover, man. What has Rick Mahorn said about the day? I guess a lot of it's public, but how much did they really hone in on Jordan and trying to not get him hurt, but like be physical with him?
Yeah, it's funny. Like they just laugh about it. It's also funny because like I'll talk to them. Like we've had Isaiah Thomas on a couple of times on the show, and you talk to them and they're like, there's no rivalry for us. We beat them. Right? Like they lost the last time, but like I think they were 3-1 against Jordan in the playoffs or something like that. Like, so to them it was no, we took care of that kid. Yeah. Like that's not an us thing, that's an everyone else's problem kind of thing. But yeah, like they're just, Rick is funny because Rick will just talk about how like Bill Laimbeer's not a dirty player and he's such a nice guy and all this stuff. I'm like, come on, we've all seen the tape. Like we know what the deal is. But yeah, they all look at it in a very like joking way in hindsight. Like it's kind of funny to see. It's like almost this evil villain mentality where it's like, oh no, it's no big deal, just a couple of elbows.
Yeah. I wonder maybe what stood out about Sports Illustrated. Any particular writers or articles that you remember?
I'm trying to think. Like, you know what? There's actually an article. It's not basketball related. There was an article. This must have been like, it was around the strike. I want to say it was like maybe 94 before the strike.
Okay.
And my dad's from Atlanta, so I was a huge Braves fan growing up, and like it helped that they were on TBS, so we would watch 100 games a year and everything, and that was a way we really like bonded, and so Greg Maddux was like my favorite. Like Greg Maddux was so scientific. He had so much crazy control. And I remember reading this article in Sports Illustrated about how he was like, he would set up pitches for later on in the season. Right. And to me, like, I'm 12 years old at the time, like that didn't make any sense to me, but I remember reading it and it just blew my mind because there was a story about how he threw a pitch to Gary Sheffield that Gary Sheffield hit to the warning track. And then in his mind, he was like, okay, I know that he thinks he could hit that as a home run and he never will. I'll always keep that just out of his power zone. And to me, reading that article, I was like, there's so much more to sports than to me, it's just like, oh, you throw a ball, you hit a ball. And that's, I think when I first really learned about like the strategy of pro sports, and my sports nerddom just like exploded at that point.
Oh, that's a great one. That's a really great example. I remember reading about KD.
Yeah.
Talking about, he would shoot from the elbow, right? Like everyone does. So that's 15-ish feet. He'd move over 3 inches to the right. Boom. Hit 20 from there, right? 3 inches. I'm just like you said, this is idea. These are tacticians.
Yeah.
I mean, Maddux. I mean, he threw I'm exaggerating, but 82 miles an hour max.
Yeah, he was like, I think he was topping out in like high 80s, low 90s at the most. And even that was like him like rearing up. But he was also, I think I vaguely remember like a 78 pitch complete game. And it's just like, you think about that now, like that's just, that would never happen in today's baseball.
Not at all, man. How about your skills on the court? You talked somewhere else about being like a little bit of a gunner, which I think as we get a little bit older, we all kind of are.
Yeah.
But what are your skills? Tell us about your skills.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I've been this tall. I've been 6 feet tall since the 7th grade, since the 8th grade. And so like I was always told like, oh yeah, you'd be like 6'5", 6'6". I'm like, great. Like I'm gonna be tall, I'll be a big man, all this stuff. And I just stopped growing in the 8th grade. I was just like never hit another growth spurt. I was like, well, okay, I guess I got to learn how to dribble and I got to learn how to shoot and all this stuff. And so it was probably like around like 16. Like I had knee surgery when I was 14 or 15. I had like a meniscus tear and everything, and it kind of like ruined me trying to play like competitive. So I was like a lot of like pick up at the gym, and it was at that point where as I was like rehabbing my knee, it was this God, what was it called? The Alhambra Athletic Club. So that was like our gym.
Okay.
And I ended up playing, it was just nothing but grown-ups. And so like 15, 16 years old, playing against grown-ups like every night. And it was like I would just go there. I would go there around 8:00 every night. I think there was one night out of the week where they used the basketball court as like an aerobics aerobics class or whatever. So like that one night I wouldn't go, and then everything else I was just like go there at 8:00, play for 2 hours, go home, go to sleep, go to school the next day. And that's where like learning how to, I remember there's this one guy, Omar, who was like 6'2", 6'3", built like Jim Jackson, lefty, like really incredible scorer. I think he played in college and everything. And he was in his like mid to late 30s at this point. And I remember him like respecting the idea that I would want to guard him, because I was just like, I guess I'll guard him. And he kind of like was like, this isn't gonna go well for you, but like whatever, like what, like you'll learn. And it actually like he helped me learn how to like create space for shots. Like watching him play, because before I was just like, all right, get the ball, shoot, dribble around, whatever. And so that was kind of like around the time that like the N1 mixtape stuff and street ball stuff kind of picked up, and I was like, oh, I can learn how to do all these tricks. So I learned how to dribble and learn how to do all these moves. But like it's funny, like talking to older players now, they feel like all these guys learn all these skills, like all these new players learn all these skills, but they don't really know how to apply them. And I remember in those times like learning how to really apply it, and then you would get into like some good full court games, and at that point like it helped my confidence to where I just started becoming a gunner. Like the whole Jason Williams effect, like pulling up in transition for three and everything. Like it started like shaping the way I played. And then it got to a point where like, now I'm just 3-point line. I'm like, I have no interest in driving into the basket anymore. But yeah, like I was on a show a couple weeks ago, and we were talking like the best feelings in like pickup ball. And I said, the number one feeling is like crossing half court with the ball and the other team starts yelling, shooter, he's a shooter, he's a shooter. Like there's not a better feeling to me than that kind of like respect on there. So like that's what I eventually got my game to be.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great Jimmy Jackson reference, first of all. Okay,
he's like the nicest dude, by the way. We get to talk to Jimmy every once in a while, and he's like the nicest guy.
Okay, do you ever ask him about Tony Braxton?
No. Not on NBA radio. Maybe off the mic.
He's a really good analyst too, man.
He's really good.
I love his work. So your graduating class of 2000, they have, I want to say 12 or 13 championships. We're talking like the alumni game, right?
Yeah.
Have you been a part of any of those?
No, I haven't been back because I moved out. I moved out like I haven't been in Sacramento for like probably 13 years at this point. I moved to Minneapolis, I moved to Miami, I moved to Salt Lake City, I moved to LA. So I haven't been back to any of that stuff, but like, man, like even now I've thought like, all right, like maybe I get back for a game or something. I could, I'll pull up in the gym a little bit.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you talked about so you started talkhoops.net. Correct me if I'm wrong. You said that like, that was just kind of open at the time. It was kind of like an open, Wild West, if you will.
Yeah.
That's such a, obviously such a cool handle that you got. You were just writing because you loved hoops. You loved to write about basketball.
Yeah.
Like, what did you see ahead, or was it just kind of like, I'm just going to do this for now? And
it's funny. Like I thought I was behind because there were a couple of writers at the time. It was like Tom Ziller, who's a legend, right? Like Tom Ziller ran Sacktown Royalty, created Sacktown Royalty, and was like just in general is a great basketball writer.
Yes, he is.
Kelly Dwyer was with Yahoo Sports at the time. He was really like kind of setting things off, and And then the basketball Jones, which is now they're no dunks, but they were the starters on NBA TV, like Jay Skeets, Tass Mellis, and those guys. Yeah. And so I was listening to them. I was listening to their podcast every morning, and then just reading certain guys, and reading Bill Simmons and Ralph Wiley and like just everybody, right? Like anyone who was writing about basketball on the internet, like I was trying to read. And yeah, I just kind of felt like I think I can do this. And it was a lot of like ego. It was a lot of ego because like I knew more about basketball than all my friends. Sure. And to me, I was like, well, that's my world. I must know more about basketball than anybody. And then you quickly like kind of realize like, oh shit, like I got a lot to learn here. And so it was, I think the good thing about what I did was I always felt like I was behind and that I had to catch up. And I never, once I like got into it, like a couple months in, I was like, there's so much I need to learn about like my craft and about what I'm doing and what I'm watching, because everyone thinks they know what they're watching when it comes to basketball, but like it's so intricate and there's so many different ways to view the eye test, right? And so like being realistic with myself about like, you know what, I probably don't know as much as I think I need to. Yeah. And kind of approaching it that way, it helped me. I think it helped me like, really form what my work ethic would be with it.
Definitely. So you talked about Kevin Arnowitz. Am I saying the name right?
Yeah, Kevin Arnowitz. Yeah.
Right. I mean, he didn't make up the quote, of course, but you talk about, don't be the smartest person in the room kind of thing. Yeah. Sounds like you really took after that ethic where you knew so much amongst your friends, but like, hey, I'm new to this business, right?
Right.
So I'd love to know about like his mentorship and then just you kind of being the newbie at the time and just kind of soaking it all in.
Yeah, like I was really fortunate that that he and Henry Abbott liked my writing enough to kind of get me into the mix with the True Hoop Network for ESPN. Right. And Kevin was just a great, or he still is, like has just been a great mentor whenever I needed advice. And when it came time to, I thought I have a chance to, pursue this as an actual career, but I need to quit my job. And I had a good enough living situation where I was, and I had just enough like money saved up with very low expenses where I was like, as long as nothing bad happens for a year, I can like scrape by. Right. And I was talking to him about it as I was trying to figure this all out. And he just said like, look, everyone who makes it has been in your position, and they all take the leap. He's like, so if you believe that you can do it, he's like, it sounds corny, but if you believe you can do it, like you have to take the leap. Yeah. And so I took that advice to heart, and I just took the leap and quit my job at the court and gave myself a year to figure it out. And I was lucky at the time that ESPN had started. So they had the True Hoop Network. So a blog for pretty much every team right away. Okay. And I was running the Kings blog because I think Tom Ziller said no. They asked Tom Ziller, he's like, no, I'm good where I am there. All right, well, you live in Sacramento. You can blog about the Kings. And I remember it was not a popular thing amongst Kings fans because I was openly not a Kings fan. Right. And like the whole idea of blogs was like, you like the team, you're going to talk about them in a positive way. And I was like, what if I'm just critical? And so that didn't go great at first, but it worked out for the most part. But ESPN started this nightly chat called the Daily Dime Live. And so when your team was playing, so when the Kings were playing, they're like, hey, come in during the game, talk to people on ESPN.com and give insight to what you're seeing. Mm-hmm. And I saw an opportunity there where I knew like the editors for ESPN.com didn't want to run this chat. Okay. Like they had better stuff to do. They had like articles to figure out and to edit and everything. And so I kind of just kept offering like, hey, I don't have anything to do tonight. Like I can jump in the chat if you want. And I just kind of took over the second half of the 2009-2010 season. Whoa. I just showed up every night through the playoffs. And then by the end of the playoffs, they offered me a job to do that full time. And so I was like, the timing of it was very fortunate.
Yeah. Shrewd moves on your part.
Yeah.
Now, was that LeBron's first year in Miami?
No, it was before that.
No.
It was before that. So like that was
Lakers. That was the Lakers.
Yeah. Lakers won the title. There was Tyreek Evans' rookie year. So the wreak havoc, Kings era and everything. Yeah. And so I remember actually the decision, we did a chat during the decision. Okay. And it like damn near melted the system. Like the chat was slowed down because it couldn't handle all the traffic coming to it. I was receiving death threats because I didn't hate LeBron James's decision and all this stuff. And like it was such a weird like baptism by fire into the whole world of it. And like, yeah, but I vividly remember it's like one of the first things that I had to do for ESPN.com after I got hired.
Shoot.
Yeah.
Well, here's my transition, right? So then you took your talents
Yeah.
You decided to take your talents to CBS down the road. But I guess first of all, on ESPN, I mean, that's like the dream, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what was that like to get in there so quickly? I mean, obviously you did your work and you deserved it, but what was that like? Was it kind of surreal to you?
Yeah, it didn't make sense. Like it felt like I was like gaming the system. It didn't make sense. Like it was funny. Like one of the first things, I think before I officially took the job, they flew me out to Bristol to like meet with like the editors and stuff. And like, and you know, it wasn't like the job wasn't much money. Like it was not it was really not even much to like live on, but it was like, you know, they bring you out there like, hey, we'll put you up, come to the ESPN campus, all this stuff. I'm like, am I being recruited here? Like shouldn't I just be like asking for this job, not like have a decision to say yes or no? And so I was there for that draft night, the 2010 draft. And so I'm like running a chat next to, you know, as like I'm watching like Chad Ford in the ESPN headquarters like do all this draft coverage in real time. And I just remember sitting there thinking like, what's happening right now? Like this can't be my life. Like it was so it was just so weird. And then like it's funny, the second time I went to the ESPN campus, there's this editor who now works for The Ringer. His name's Justin Verrier, and he's a really good writer. He's a really good editor. He was an editor for NBA.com at the time, and he like this huge UConn guy, like went to UConn, huge UConn alum. And I felt like I was in one of those commercials because we went to go have like lunch in the ESPN like cafeteria area, and out of nowhere, this Syracuse orange mascot runs up and like accosts him and then runs off. And we're all like, what just happened there? And I'm like, are they filming a commercial? Why would he be in a commercial? He's like, Justin's a nobody. Like it's not like they're gonna know that. And just someone had knew the mascot was there and was like, well, he's a UConn guy, go mess with him. It's just all these like weird moments where I was like, all this is just so surreal.
Some classic commercials in their time, right?
Yeah.
All right. So you're going over to ESPN, you're doing the NBA draft. Like, is there something in your contract at the time you have to say long and athletic like 30 times a minute?
Yeah, like, you know, wingspan was a big thing. Like you had to say wingspan, you had to say long, athletic, high motor, high upside, you know, upside potential, all that stuff. Like it's all there's just a list of like terms you can throw out there.
So many. I've heard like just about writers in general, like freelance, like get a good tax guy or get a good tax, you know, girl, right? You work so many different companies.
Yeah.
You know, CBS and the FRS and now into the Athletic. How do you have to put on like a different persona? I mean, you write for the Athletic.
Yeah.
You do like, you know, NBA, like I'm assuming probably pretty soon you'll do like, you know, off season, like, you know, report card, right? You do all the podcasts, you know, somewhere you can just be hilarious and, you know, just, you know, have total fun with it. I'm sure it's fun when it's more serious too, but like, I just wonder about all the different personas you take on as a writer, analytical writer. You know, you do the movie podcast.
Yeah.
Like, is that fun for you? Is it like an
I love that. That's actually like Cinephobe. So Cinephobe's a movie podcast, and like that's actually like the most fun out of my week. And I love covering basketball. Like it still doesn't feel real that it's my career, but yeah, Cinephobe is oddly like it's just such a change of pace, and the whole idea is just like, let's watch a horrible movie and try to figure out if it was actually good, right? And like we'll make jokes, and it's going to be long form, and it's going to be dumb, and we have all these recurring bits and stuff. So that's become like just this really fun moment of every week for me to record that and do all that stuff. But I've tried to make it because I'm not going to name names, but like there are people in this industry that are not themselves, right? They're not like they're just when they're on a podcast or on the radio or they're on TV, like that's not the real them. And I kind of witnessed that early on in my career, and it just was it just left a bad taste in my mouth. And so I've tried to be as me as possible in no matter what I'm doing. And so we started this company, Count the Dings, which is a podcast company, and the Athletic eventually bought our NBA stuff. And so like all the Athletic NBA pods came from our company, and then Cinephobe is where you know, also from that company. Now that's part of Dan Le Batard's network. Yeah. Which is really cool because he's just a huge person that I like completely respect. Like I love the way he does everything. Like he's awesome. Yeah. But it's like one of the things, so before the pandemic, we did live shows. So we did a couple live shows in New York, we did a couple live shows in LA, we did one in Vegas and Boston and Chicago. We did a bunch in the Bay Area. And so one thing that I really tried to make sure was like, if you see me at a live show, on stage, off stage, whatever, it's going to be the same person you read online, the same person you hear on a podcast. Like to me, that's very important, because I don't want to like leave some like, wow, that guy's phony, that guy's not being himself on here. Like, I want that. To me, that's very important. And so I've tried to like not have a persona that isn't me. And that's not always easy, because it's definitely gotten me into trouble before with a couple of companies that I've worked for in the past. Luckily the Athletic, lets me do whatever, they just try not to like do something that's going to make us fire you, right? Like, you could do, you can push the envelope all you want, but don't get yourself in too much trouble. But yeah, like for the most part, I just wanted to be as authentic as it can be.
Yeah. And that definitely comes through for sure. I mean, I know it's work, and I know you're busy, but it's got to be a heck of a lot of fun just doing all the things you do.
It's a ton of work, and it's a grind, but like my job is to watch basketball and give my opinion. I don't even have to be right. Like, it's just like, it really, I think for a long time too, because my parents didn't understand like the whole like live chat aspect of ESPN. Like when I first I'm like, hey, I work for ESPN and I, doing this, and they're like, that doesn't sound like a job. Like, I think there was probably a point where they were like, are you dealing drugs? Like, what, like, do you actually have a job doing this stuff? But stuff that's a little easier to understand and more tangible. But like, like this shouldn't be a job, man. It really it's such a like, I'm just so fortunate to get to do this and to be able to have done it as long as I have. And like because I mean, some would argue I don't have these skills, but like, I don't have any other skills. I have I dropped out of college. Like I have no other backing. So I kind of have to make this work. Otherwise I don't know what I'm going to do.
Hey, you clearly have the skills. I mean, so for example, like, to cherry pick articles and stuff is ridiculous, because you have so much content out there. But, like you talked about last year, you did the breakdown of goals for each team, going into the 21-22 season. I was struck by the Jazz, and I kind of forgotten how good the Jazz were last year, and like they're still young, and it's like, man, this is going to be their coming year. What happened with Ingles this year? Did he get traded, released?
Yeah, he blew out his knee right before the trade deadline, maybe a couple of weeks before the trade deadline, and then he got traded for just like, because his deal was expiring. So his deal was expiring, so he got moved, and then I mean it's kind of a well-known secret, like he's just going to sign with the Jazz in the offseason and rehab. Like, I don't think he ever went to Portland. He got traded to Portland. I don't think he ever went to Portland. He just stayed in Utah to rehab and everything, and like he'll be back with them sometime next season.
Obviously, like, like a good role player, but not like a star. But not just the Jazz, I guess, but any other teams that you really felt either personally, professionally, were just like, wow, like just disappointment or like surprise that you just couldn't believe they did great, or they did horribly. Yeah,
like I didn't. I mean, I never saw the Lakers being as bad as they were. Because at a certain point, I mean, I know they had injuries and everything. They sucked even when they didn't have injuries. Like they were just bad. They didn't gel. They didn't do the work. They didn't play defense. That was their identity the previous 2 years, is that they would defend no matter what. And so I was shocked that it fell apart the way it did. And maybe I should have seen some of that coming with the way the roster was constructed. But you just see, hey, they have LeBron, they have AD, they'll figure it out. And I thought the Russ thing would be fine enough. Like, I didn't think it was this amazing acquisition, but like, I was like, that's good enough. You always have a star on the court. That's important now. So I didn't see them doing that. I thought Memphis would be good, not nearly as good as they were. Like, that was a fun surprise, because I love trash talk. I think it's exactly how people should play. It raises the stakes. Like, you either have to back it up or you get embarrassed. Like, I think it adds the entertainment. And that team would not stop talking trash. They were down 25. They were up 25. One of my favorite moments for the season was they were playing the Lakers, and
Zaire Williams.
Well, no, this was Desmond Bain. So Desmond Bain, this is before that. So Desmond Bain is talking trash to LeBron, and like LeBron's like, watch your mouth, you're in trouble and everything. LeBron gets the ball. Next possession, he goes and dunks on Jaren Jackson Jr. and he's like puffing his chest, and they're still down 18 points. And Desmond Bane's like pointing at the scoreboard and like, you're still down 18, and they ended up killing the Lakers in that game. But like, to me, like, this Grizzlies team is so much fun, and so they were like a great surprise. I thought they'd be good, but not second best in the league good.
Right. I'm maybe thinking of the same story, and maybe I'm there's a little hyperbole involved or something, but I had the story as part of it was that Zaire Williams was one of them. Like, was either trash talking or like someone was trash talking for him. And I just love that. Like you said, it's fun.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that Zaire Williams played with LeBron's son in high school like 2 years ago.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. Is that they were like or the part of the maybe the same AAU program or something like that. Yeah.
So to me, it's just like not backing down from anyone.
Yeah. No, they're
LeBron
just like,
arguably top, 3, 4 ever.
Yeah.
And this guy's just like, why not?
I mean, they just lost to they just lost to the Warriors. And after the series was over, Dylan Brooks was like, well, they're old and we're young, so they know we're coming. And it's like, you just lost, and you were the reason they lost because you were so bad. Like, it's but they'll talk no matter what.
You gotta love it. And I just talked about not liking rankings, but I have to say probably Vince on Frederick Weiss was the greatest dunk of all time. And
it's
for
hard
people,
to beat,
right? And for people to be like, not just him in particular, but like, oh, why do people talk so much trash? You're telling me that you do like a Vince Carter dunk, and you would not just like, talk about his mama. And just,
if I could jump like Vince Carter, I would never stop doing it, and I would never stop talking trash to people I dunked on. Like, never. I don't understand, and it's like a very, I don't know, the unwritten rules of sports. Like, I can't stand, like, it's just such an old way of looking at stuff. And I don't know. I guess like we're always taught like act like you've been there before. And I'm just like, I don't know. I've seen enough careers cut short and enough, windows and dynasties cut way shorter than we thought they would be. And I'm just like, man, just if you can celebrate now, celebrate, right? If you can cash out. If you can do all, like, enjoy the moment. Like, we're always supposed to act like none of it affects us. And I think that's boring. Like, that's not entertainment. This is entertainment. So yes, raise the stakes, talk trash, like dunk on someone and like point in their face and get a technical and all that stuff. And then, you know what? Next time they dunk on you, they're going to do the exact same thing. As long as it doesn't start a fight. And even if it starts a fight, that's not a problem for me. I understand it's a problem for the league, but yeah, man, I just think like this stuff is supposed to be fun.
And maybe even Kawhi, right? Kawhi laugh a little bit.
Kawhi
laugh.
Kawhi's a different dude. Kawhi is like Kawhi. If you get him talking about rap, he's the most animated guy. Anything else, like, he is not interested in talking about it. It's weird.
Who's his rapper? Who's his top 2 or 3?
I think Kendrick. I think well, at least like I've heard him talking about Kendrick like very animatedly, and that was a few years ago. But yeah, I think Kendrick, because he's an LA guy and everything. Yeah, like, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I read that Kawhi's dad's dad had very sad, and his dad's generation is from Compton, actually. So there's a connection to Kendrick. New album. Did you hear the new album?
I've heard some of it so far. I liked what I heard, but I gotta like really sit down and listen to it. Yeah,
definitely. So what I really appreciate about you was I heard one of your interviews, and it was from 2020, right before the bubble was about to start.
Yeah,
you talk about, let's have fun with this, man. It's not all that serious, trash talk. Yeah, you were talking about at the time. This was probably June or July 2020. Like, you're like, I'm an NBA guy, but I'm not looking forward to the season. Right. This was George Floyd. This was, everything that was going on. COVID was hitting hard. So I appreciate it. Like you said, I mean, I think you understand basketball is supposed to be fun. It's not life and death.
Yeah. Right? I think too, like, just during that time with the way the pandemic hit, and then just it felt like for once, like, Black Lives Matter was taken seriously, right? Instead of just like, oh, what is this thing? It was like, no, people, because they were forced to be at home and pay attention, like there was no distraction. So, like, look, I watch basketball every damn day, but it felt like as we were restarting, it felt like, okay, this feels like a distraction from something that's way more important, right? And it's, I don't know. I think we should take that stuff very seriously. I think, especially, coming from where we've come from, like, we just had a lot of advantages that I think we take for granted. Like, I believe in privilege. I believe in all that stuff like that. These are real things. And I don't want to, like, I want basketball to be as great as it can be. I want to celebrate every moment we get to watch, and like it's entertainment, it's my favorite thing, but I don't want it to distract from more important things.
No doubt, man.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting his first name right now. Great book if you haven't read it. Sullivan's his last name, and it's about the Brooklyn
Matt
Nets.
Sullivan. Yeah, Matt Sullivan. Yeah.
And the Brooklyn Nets and that season and their advocacy. And man, I finished that book 7-8 months ago.
Yeah.
Big fan of Kyrie. This was before all the crap now. But
right.
Kyrie and just all the decisions they had, I think it was the Bucks, sat out one of the games.
Yeah. We actually had to do on NBA radio. Sorry to cut you. We had that day. So the game times were super weird in the bubble and everything. And so we got a call, myself and Amin Al-Hassan, we got a call from the NBA radio channel manager. Yeah. And he's like, hey, there's a protest going on. The Bucks aren't playing. You need to get on the radio right now.
Oh, shoot.
And so we just went live, from our living rooms or whatever, live and trying to figure out how to talk about it in real time. Like what was going on? What are the updates and everything? Yeah. And I just remember I've never felt so unprepared to be on the radio as like that moment. Cause we're just sitting at home. Like all that stuff's happening 3,000 miles away. We had no idea how to talk about this stuff, but the Bucks taking that stand, that was was it Jacob Blake? Like that it was that shooting. Like it was just there was just so much going on at the time.
How freaking terrible is it that it's like so hard sometimes to remember names because of
I know
so many.
I know, and like every once in a while there'll be some graphic on social media and stuff, and I'm like, oh god, I forgot about that one. Yeah. I forgot about that one, and stuff that at the time was very present, and then it's just there's so many of them now that it's just like you lose track of it.
That's why they say his name, right? Say her name.
Yeah, exactly.
Were you ever part of the bubble?
No, I got I had the option to go, but not knowing how long it was going to be, because you could be there for 2 months, you could be there for 3.5 months, and I just for some people they want I have some friends who ended up covering the NBA in the bubble there, and they're like, oh, it's gonna be such a great journalism experiment, and such an experience and stuff. And I'm like, I see how you would feel that way. To me, I don't know. I didn't want to be locked. If I was gonna be locked somewhere, I wanted to be at home with my dog. Like that was interesting to me.
That was a crazy time. Like I said, who knew what was gonna happen? How many months? Who was gonna get sick? On a much lighter note, Amin is absolutely hilarious.
He's, as someone who talks to him an unreasonable amount, he's the most talented and frustrating person I deal with on a daily basis.
He's got you talk about what was it, Greg Maddux thinking ahead. I feel like he's got 6-7 jokes developing.
Oh man, he just looks at things in a different way. Not just basketball. He just looks at life in a very different way. He helped me come up with it, because I don't like talking in like Ubers and stuff like that. I've developed a thing where some people call it psychotic, some people call it smart, but I'll have AirPods in or whatever, and I'll just pretend I'm on a conference call. So just every once in a while, you're like, yeah, Tuesday works, but you just you do that. But with Amin, especially because he's more recognizable because he's on TV and everything, or he was on TV. He would get asked oh, so what do you do? And he would just be like, oh, I work for this plastics company that creates this one part for a Tonka truck, right? And so, but he could break it all down and talk about the specifics, all just from having looked at what a Tonka truck looks like, and and he would just create this stuff, so he didn't have to say oh yeah, I work for ESPN, and this is what I do. Crazy
analytical, man. He obviously knows his stuff. Did he invent the hashtag Celtics game or Patino game?
The Patino game, yeah, he came up with the Patino game. That's it. That's his product, and it's, man, every time a team gets eliminated, you got to get in there early, because he is getting flooded with mentions.
Somebody got Richard Dumas way before me last night.
Yeah.
I threw in Thunder Dan, but that was it'd probably been done. That was
it was probably instant with that one. Yeah.
Oh man. So you guys do the Cinephobe, and, him and Anthony Mays as well.
Yeah.
So the movie's got to have a 40% or less on Rotten Tomatoes. Who came up with that idea? What a cool and original idea.
Yeah. So it's funny. Amin and I always text each other, back for years we would text each other if he was on the road or I'm on the road, of watching this movie in the hotel right now, have you seen this? And it's always bad movies, right? And so we would kind of break them down in text, and then eventually we're just kind of let's make this a podcast. And so there's this podcast called How Did This Get Made, where they they watch like ridiculous movies.
Yeah.
Right. And so it can be a good movie, it can be a bad movie, but it's just these ridiculous premises. And there's some crossover into what they've done and what we'll consider. But so we were, kind of trying to figure out how to do this podcast, and we're like 3 months into kind of planning it, what we want it to be. And so we're trying to set up these parameters. And so I'm aware of how did this get made, because I would listen to it occasionally. And about 3 months into planning this thing, Amin goes, there's a movie podcast called How Did This Get Made? I was like, yeah, you dummy. Like, I've been trying to get us to not just be copying this thing. And so because they'll do any movie, just if it's a ridiculous premise, I was like, we need to have like a criteria, right? Like, let's just do it for, we're trying to figure out, like, is 30% too low? Is 40% too high? What? And we just decided 40% from the critics or the audience. As long as it hits one of those, like, that will also keep us from like doing just any movie, right? And so we'll get asked to do all these movies that are ridiculous but don't qualify, and we just stick to our criteria, because that's the way to like kind of keep us in our lane and keep it separate from other movie podcasts.
I was lucky enough to hear Rocky 4 was one of the episodes.
Rocky 4 was an experience.
I mean, this is kind of a loaded question, but not a loaded question, but the answer to this question is yes. Right. Rocky definitely brought about the end of the Cold War with his speech, right?
I think so. Like, I don't know how you could view it otherwise, because he gives the speech and then not that far after the Cold War's over. And I'm guessing there's some kind of logistical issue in trying to end a Cold War. So I think the timeline works.
If I can change and you can change. Beautiful. Yeah, you were talking about it as like a gateway drug, right? Yeah, and
it's so funny. Like, so we do, like, one of the things we'll do for breaking down the movie is, like, at the end of it, one of the things we do is like who acted their ass off and who acted their ass on, right? Who was the bad actor and who was the good actor. We named the ass off award, the good actor award, after Carl Weathers.
Oh, because I learned so much about him from that episode.
Yeah, we loved him, and we did Action Jackson as an earlier episode, and we loved that movie, and we loved that episode. It was so fun. And then there's a point, like, when he dies, spoiler alert, when he dies in Rocky 4, he spazzed, like, he went off script and he spasmed as he hits the ground and everything. And it actually tricked the doctor who was on set, just to make sure nothing goes wrong or whatever, where the doctor rushed over because they thought that there was something wrong with Carl Weathers. And we're like, okay, we have to name that. This is like now the Carl Weathers Memorial Ass Off Award, because he's just that good.
So much respect for him. I had so much respect ahead of time. Now, I might have missed it. Did you reference Happy Gilmore? He was incredible in that.
I think we brought it up in the Action Jackson episode of that one. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we brought it up in Rocky 4, but I'm pretty sure we brought it up in Action Jackson.
Just trying to ease the tension, baby.
Such a great role, man. Such a great role.
So good. I mean, James, like, how surreal was it? It was like the Master P make him say video, just over the top, like James Brown, like in a US, right?
I think it gave way. Like, I don't know that we ever have the great entrances in boxing without Apollo Creed coming into living in America. Like, it's just that, like, and it's never gotten better than that.
I mean, I don't. Can you blame Drago for feeling like he's like, all right, let's go. Like, just
like, all right, you want to know how this goes? Like, this is not an exhibition. We're gonna really throw down.
Now, I wonder, have you done it's escaping me the name of the movie, that terrible movie with it, the James Franco did The
Room. Yeah. The Room. No, we haven't done The Room. We've decided that we're not going to do it. Or if we do, it might be like a special episode way down the road. But every movie podcast has done one on The Room. Been there, but it's, I mean, I don't know if you've seen it. Like, I've seen that, and seen, like, The Disaster Artist does an amazing job of recreating that movie. It is dead on, like, shot for shot. Everything is so accurate, and it's just a bizarre movie. And like being around LA, like, there are people who have stories of Tommy Wiseau, of like, being around him and stuff. Like, it's just a weird dude.
What's the famous line? Hey, Mark. Or,
yeah, he's like, oh, hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Oh, hi.
He like claims that he's like 25, and it's like, no, you're definitely
dude had to have been 50 easily.
At least. Like, just not even a good lie, man. Like I said, we're just scratching the surface. You do so many things. You do so many things well. You're an incredibly good writer. Your NBA. You can analyze. You can tell the stories. You're great with the movies. Pop culture references. What's next? Are you gonna? I mean, do you see yourself doing this for a while now? Are you
Yeah.
expanding even more? Another podcast? Shoot.
I think like if I got to like kind of fantasize about what could be next, I was lucky enough. A good friend of mine is a comedian, Ian Carmel.
Okay.
Ian is a co-head
With a
writer
K,
for,
right?
yeah, with a K.
Yeah.
He's a co-head writer for James Corden's show. He's been on that show. He's been a writer on that show since its inception. He used to write for Chelsea Handler's show.
Nice.
And Ian's just a crazy talented, like one of the funniest people you'll ever meet, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. And back in 2016, 2017, end of 2016, beginning of 2017, he had a Comedy Central pilot. That he was trying to like create like a sports comedy show. And so I was lucky enough, he asked me to write on the pilot. And so I went to LA for a week, and we like kind of me and all the other writers and producers like kind of tried to, you know, figure out what the show was going to be. And then January, February, we went back to LA and wrote it and shot it and everything. And it went really well. And then it's hard to do sports comedy.
Yeah.
Like Comedy Central, like spent a bunch of money on it and then just decided not to go with it. And because it's hard to make sports comedy work, but that experience was one of the most fun things I've ever done. So I think maybe like kind of dabbling in that world a little bit. I've done a couple of shows at the Hollywood Improv of like something where we would watch an old game show episode and like break it down like it's sports. And so like kind of something in that world like would be a lot of fun to me.
So Mystery Science Theater 3001 with Zach Harper, something like that.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, that would be a dream for me to do something like that. And it was like we did the old supermarket sweep, and we did an episode of Double Dare, and I could do that all day. Like that. Those are my two favorite game shows.
So what's the deal? Isn't Mark Summers like a germaphobe?
Yeah, he's big time germaphobe.
Right. And just like the slime and stuff. Oh man.
Yeah, like it would like freaked him out, like having to do all that stuff, but you would never know. Like he was such a professional.
Shoot.
Yeah.
Speaking of professional, last question for you. You know, as you're watching the games, right?
Yeah.
I guess the obvious answer is yes, but I guess like how do you watch differently now? Like can you watch, just sit back and watch as a true fan, or is it more like I got to analyze,
I can't like walk by a park and like see someone shoot a basketball without like analyzing how it goes at this point. Like I actually, there are times like I really would like to turn it off and just like try to watch something normally, but no, like it's really difficult to do. And I think I went to a UCLA USC basketball game, I don't know, like 4 years ago or something like that, and just as a fan, and was sitting there watching it. I was like, this is great. Like this is like just sitting back and watching that as a fan. And then I was on a date for a Clippers Memphis game earlier this season. It was like at the beginning of the season.
It's a good date.
And it was like some double date or whatever, and just sat in the stands for the first time in a long time as opposed to like being media. And I like drank a beer, and I was like, I don't think I'm allowed to drink this right now. And I was like, no, I bought a ticket. Of course I can drink this. Like, this is stupid. But it was like, but even then I was like, you know, I'm analyzing like, all right, the Grizzlies are going to do this, and then the Clippers are going to do this. And no, I can't remember the last time I got to actually just sit down and watch a game normally, but it's also like, it's just kind of cool. It's kind of cool to watch it differently now, and knowing, you know, that's one of the things, like going back and watching old games of like realizing, oh, I had no idea what I was watching back then, but I knew it was fun. Right. And now knowing why it's fun and why it's difficult and why it's complicated and everything, like there is like, again, I'm a huge basketball nerd. So like there's something like very satisfying in being able to watch the game that way now. And like this job, you never stop learning. Yeah. If you do this job right, you never stop learning. So I'm always learning something new, you know, every month, every season, whatever. And it's fun. I love learning that.
I appreciate the perspective. It's clear. Obviously, basketball is the greatest sport in the world, hands down.
Oh, no by argument, far. Right? By far.
And I lied just when we talked about, you know, predictions and what they matter or don't matter.
Yeah.
Let's spin the wind a little bit. Who's winning the finals?
So I just did a podcast this morning. I think I picked Heat versus Mavs as like a remix of 2006 and 2011. I don't know how much I believe that, but I'll stick with it. Heat Mavs, and then I'll say Heat in 6. I think the Heat win it.
I appreciate that. I so much appreciate your time, man. It's been an honor talking
absolutely.
to you, getting into the lab a little bit. And I just want to wish you great luck in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
What a pleasure it's been speaking to Zach Harper, 916 Sacktown's finest. Continue good luck to him with all of his ventures.
Go Marauders.
Go Marauders. Thanks for listening to episode 123 with Zach Harper. You can now subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. You can also ask for it by name using Alexa and find it on Stitcher, Spotify, and Amazon Music, even though we don't like to patronize the last two. And Zach, come on, man. My bad. I got to ask you, tell us about, there's Cinephobe. Tell us about where to find you.
The Athletic NBA Show podcast. I'm on the Monday and Thursday episodes every week hosting those. So you can find that wherever you get podcasts. I am on Cinephobe, which you find on the Lebitard and Friends Network or wherever you get podcasts from Meadowlark Media. NBA Radio, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday morning from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific time. It's channel 86 on your SiriusXM dial. And then Mad Dog Sports Radio, that's channel 82 on your SiriusXM dial every Saturday night from 8 to 11 p.m.
Heck yeah. And you're pretty active on social media for sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
At Talk Hoops on all social platforms, and subscribe to The Athletic. It's the best sports coverage on the internet.
Man, it's really good stuff. So you said all platforms, even TikTok?
TikTok, yeah. I don't make TikToks. I just watch them to learn how I'm living poorly. But eventually there will be some TikTok coverage there.
Oh, shoot. All right.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. This is a passion project of mine. It's a DIY operation, and I'd love for your help in promoting what I'm convinced is a unique and spirited look at an often ignored art form. The intro song for the Chills Will podcast is Wind Down instrumental. The other song played on the episode was, fittingly enough, Hoops, instrumental by Matt Whitehour. Both songs are used through archesaudio.com. Please tune in for episode 124 with Robin Peguero. Robin Peguero is an Afro-Latino and the son of immigrants who graduated from Harvard College and Harvard Law School. He's written for the Miami Herald, the Harvard Crimson, and the Harvard Law Review. And he served as press spokesman in the U.S. House and as a speechwriter in the U.S. Senate before becoming a lawyer. His book, With Prejudice, comes out, which is tomorrow, the 17th. He's currently a U.S. House investigative counsel working on domestic terrorism, and that episode airs on May 24th. For now, thanks again for listening, and I hope that these quarantine days bring you texts and podcasts by writers and podcasters with mad skills like Zach Harper, whose work gives you chills at will. Stop recording.